Okay, good night or good evening, everyone. It's thanks for joining us. Last tune-up here before we get things started next week. If you've been with us either in person or have checked in with the recordings, thank you. The whole goal was to present information to you to stimulate thought and discussion, not only specifically about the deep three position, but throughout the crew. So hopefully that's occurred. You know, the other thing that comes to mind is that we're not expecting anyone, regardless of your experience at one of the deep three positions, whether rookie or seasoned veteran, that you're going to 100% of the time perform every mechanic or apply every philosophy exactly correctly. You know, many of you know that I put in 45 years of college football, 25 at the MAC and the Big Ten. And I never got to the point where I had it all figured out. There were always things that I was working on, always things that I thought I could do better. And that's really the whole purpose of this, is that by sharing together that we get better, not only collectively, but we also get better individually. So if you think of it that way, the ideal situation would be that if something happens in a game, and maybe it happens so quickly that you don't have the time to react in a way that would be consistent with what we've talked about this summer. Instead of being all down in the dumps about it, what I'd rather have you do is to say, okay, that's a practical application of what Rich was talking about. And when that happens next time, I'm going to be ready for it and I'm going to do it. That's really what we're looking to do. So it's going to happen incrementally. It's never going to stop occurring. You're always going to be looking, and there will be opportunities there to do things better as you continue through your games and your seasons. So we're here to support you. And once again, just really appreciate the time that you put in this summer to work on this. So let's jump into some video. Not as many plays tonight. With the idea that we're going to have a little bit of time for troubleshooting, or as the email said, potpourri, and then we'll conclude with a few comments. Okay, this first situation is going to be a pass that's going to go to the flat at the right side of the screen, and as we think about catch, no catch, there are some key factors that we need to keep in mind. And in my mind, there are three. First of all, we need to understand firm control. You know, people talk about, well, the receiver didn't have the ball long enough, or the receiver had it long enough. It doesn't mean anything. What really counts is, does the receiver ever obtain firm control? Secondly, after obtaining firm control of the ball, does the receiver make a football move, or could he make a football move? Throw it, hand it, kick it, those sorts of things. So the third thing would be, when the receiver is going to the ground, either due to contact or without contact, he has to survive the ground unless he has first attained firm control. The old adage is the ground cannot create a fumble, but it can create an incomplete pass. So in this particular instance, you can see that the receiver gets both hands on the ball, but has not had the opportunity to put the ball away yet. What are we talking about putting the ball away? Is my picture up, Gregor?
Yeah, Rich, everyone can see it.
What we're looking at is, once you gain firm control of the ball, that you brought it into your body. That is firm control of the ball. Now, if he runs down the field, which is unlikely with the ball like this, okay, now it's subject to getting stripped out of it or what have you. But that's really not the nature of how the game is played anymore. So they're taught to put the ball away. So in this particular case, you can see that the receiver initially gets both hands on the ball, but then very quickly the defender makes a great defensive play and strips the receiver of the ball by pulling away his right arm. This is a classic incomplete pass. Now, initially, we get a beanbag down from our short wing. Back judge does an outstanding job. First of all, he's in perfect position. He's on the end line. He's stationary. He lets the play develop very calmly, comes up and goes incomplete pass. I mean, it doesn't look like he's ready to take flight or anything like that by waving his arms. He just comes in with a very smooth, confident, incomplete signal. That's what we're looking for in a play like this. And it's also a good time for us to talk about what the PowerPoint talked about. And that is the importance of viewing these kinds of plays as a crew. We don't have replay until you get to Ford Field. So replay is within your crew. So the more officials you have on the field, whether it's 4, 5, or 7, we're going to get 2 or 3 different looks at plays like this. And it's important at the end of the play for us to come out and make a decision. Now, if we come out of it right away and make it incomplete, there isn't anything we can do because we've ruled it incomplete. So we're going to be stuck with the incomplete ruling. If it's that close, we can let it play out. And then at the end of the play, come together, talk it over, and perhaps consider reversing it to an incomplete pass rather than a fumble and a return. In the event that we're going to rule it as an incomplete pass when we've let it played out, we need to do 2 things, referees. We need to get on the microphone and simply say the ruling on the field is an incomplete pass, 3rd down. The other thing we need to do that shows that we really have our stuff together is that we need to put time back on the game clock because the game clock should have stopped at 13:05, whatever it happens to be. And at the end of the play, if we've got 12:55 on the board, what we want to do is come back and say, game clock operator, please set the clock to 13:05. And when that is done, just simply say thank you and turn off the mic, make the ball ready for play, and we put it back in action. All right, this next one is going to be an illustration of, and by the way, catch, no catch applies to offense and defense equally. It also applies to recoveries near sidelines, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this defensive back is going to extend himself and go to the ground without contact. It is his responsibility to gain firm control, maintain firm control, and then survive the ground while maintaining firm control. And we can't tell for sure because the definition isn't good enough here. This appears to be an intercepted pass. But once again, as a crew, we would want to get together. If there's any question at all, share information and come to a conclusion as a crew. So that's in there just to illustrate going to the ground. All right, next clip. This should be an obvious incomplete pass. It kind of goes along with the first one we looked at. Comes out, immediately gets drilled. No way does he have a chance to put this ball away. Now, if he maintains control, firm control of this ball as his fanny ends up on the turf for about a 4-yard loss, okay, then we got a completed catch for a loss. In this particular case, boom, it gets knocked out of there. Incomplete pass, just not enough time to gain firm control. All right, next one is going to be 148. And I put this one in here for the reason to simply say, never, ever assume that a pass is going to be incomplete. Now, in this particular case, I think we would agree that while the receiver initially got his hands on the ball, wasn't able to control it, hits the turf, and then as it bounces up, he has a chance to re-secure the ball. But my point is, don't prejudge what the ruling on the field is going to be. Let it play out. The players are tremendously talented, and they will surprise us with their athleticism and their ability to make plays on the ball. So this turns out to be an obvious incomplete pass, but under different circumstances, it might have been a great interception. All right, next should be number 21. What I want to illustrate here is the importance of teamwork in terms of our communication. Trips to the top of the screen. All right, now this player rolled over twice during the course of going to the ground. So that means 2, maybe 3 different people are going to have looks at whether this ball rattles around in there, whether his hands come off of the ball, what have you. Remember that the ball can touch the turf. Once you've got firm control of the ball, if the ball hits the ground and it doesn't rattle around in the guy's hands, then the ball can hit the turf, as long as that firm control has been maintained and the ground is not used in some way to gain that firm control. So here, what we need to look at is, and if you go slow, Gregor, see, he rolls over a couple times. So you're going to have different people with shots at it. Initially, my sense is that the back judge should have the best look at what happens with this ball as he's going to the turf. Because he turns, see, he rolls over. So now his back is towards the line of scrimmage and is facing the back judge. So once the ball is airborne, everybody remains stationary and goes to the ball. So if that ball is rattling around in there after it's hit the ground, then back judge is going to come in, as with the first clip, and say, nice try, but that's incomplete, roll the down box. But then he continues to roll, and now he ends up facing the deep wing and the short wing. Once again, he's got to survive this all the way to the end of the play to earn his catch. In this particular case, again, we don't have the benefit of multiple angles, high definition, what have you, but this appears to be a catch. The other thing I want to point out from a mechanical standpoint, watch the movement of our short wing at the top of the screen. He starts moving much, much, much too quickly. We want that short wing, in 7-person mechanics anyway, to continue to hold that spot. We're always going to be better with our vision when we're stationary as opposed to when we're on the move. Sometimes we don't have any choice. We just have to do the best we can because the nature of the play means we got to be moving. Just like in basketball, you don't get every play from a stationary position. Some of them are on the run, on the fly. But short wing over hustles here. Now, I get it. It's early in the game. We're still excited. It's Ford Field, all of that. But this is where we got to hunker down and stay with our base mechanics in terms of what we're supposed to do in a given situation. All right, next clip is 28. We're not going to be able to be definitive. Next clip. We're not going to be able to be definitive on this. But again, we want to talk about process. See, we don't, the camera cuts off too quick. We don't get the ruling. It appears suspect, but if we go a little bit slower, as slow as we can, I think you can see that initially those hands are not under the ball. The ball is really more up in the wrist arm area as opposed to out here with the hands. And then he's able to slide his hands up to give the appearance of firm control. This appears to be an incomplete pass, but I can't swear to it. Okay, next clip. Here the receiver's knee is down in bounds, but he still has to survive the ground. All right, now we can't get fooled by a play like this because we need to recognize that we're looking for a body part to get down in bounds. So that's phase one. Do we get a body part down in bounds legally, which we do here? Then does he maintain control, firm control, and survive the ground? If we don't recognize the body part down first, we could get fooled and say, well, he landed out of bounds. Well, no, he didn't land out of bounds first. He had a body part down. So these are the kinds of questions. Let's say that our short wing wants to make this incomplete. So deep wing or back judge, you're going to come in and you're going to say, John, Fred, whomever it is, what made that pass incomplete? Well, number one, if the person says, well, I felt, okay, right off the bat, that person isn't certain, right? So right off the bat, it's more likely you're going to take charge of this play. But let's say he says, hey, guy flat out landed out of bounds. Okay, did the receiver maintain firm control of the ball as he was going to the ground out of bounds? Yeah, but he landed out of bounds. Well, no, he got a body part down. So as long as you get firm control of this ball after he hit the turf, we got a catch. So there, once again, we bring that information to the referee. The referee simply flips on the mic and says the ruling on the field is completed catch. Runner is down at the 22-yard line, and the down is either first or whatever it happens to be. Now, here's the key. As soon as we get people back where they belong, we mark the ball ready for play. We're not going to debate this thing. This is not a public referendum, okay? As a crew, we've come to the conclusion that, and back judge may come in, may have an opinion, and referee, ultimately, sometimes you got to make a decision because maybe you got two guys with one opinion and one with the other, or vice versa. So sometimes you just got to use your intuition and make a call in terms of what we're going to do here. But the questions that you ask are incredibly important. And you need to listen for clues in terms of not only how your partner or partners are answering questions, but not only the content, but how they're answering it. And again, when we start out with, well, I thought, or it looked like, right off the bat, we got to be thinking, no, we got to fix this. Okay, next clip. Should be 66, Gregor. Now, this pass is going to get stripped out before the receiver could put it away. See, now he goes up maybe a full step, maybe a little bit more than a step, but he has the ball out in front of him. And before we can give him credit for full, firm control, he's going to bring it in. Now, again, if he holds the thing out there like a loaf of bread, fine, rule it a fumble. But if he's making an attempt to bring it in, then in a situation like this, we want to wipe this off. All right, that's the first series of clips dealing with catch, no catch. So let's stop right there. Concepts that you want to review from the PowerPoint, or questions that were generated from those clips that we just looked at. These are not easy plays. So on one hand, when we're sitting here with video and we're going back and forth and we're going slow motion, all of that, it's pretty easy to say this either was or it wasn't. It's obviously much more complicated when it's live out in the field. But train yourself in terms of the content of the information that is within the PowerPoint in terms of things like firm control, surviving the ground, making a football move. Those kinds of things will put you in much better position to initially judge what happened, but then also actively and effectively participate in a conference if one is required, not if, but when a conference is needed to talk about a tough one. And then the final thing that probably comes into play is, the philosophically, when in doubt, we wipe it out. But let's be cautious. It's kind of like, well, I threw a flag on that particular play because it was a safety foul. In other words, justifying why we put a flag down. We can't use when in doubt, wipe it out is just a rationale for the fact that we're just going to make it incomplete. That's not right, or that's not fair either. But when we get to the point where we've gone through it and it's really that uncertain, then you can apply that principle. But just make sure that you got something to hang your hat on. And even though it may seem like that the comment that I made earlier about never presume a pass is incomplete until it's not, you might think, well, geez, that's a direct conflict to what you just said in terms of when in doubt, wipe it out. What I'm really talking about with the first concept is don't give up on the play before it's over. Don't go out, well, that's going to be an incomplete pass, and essentially quit officiating. You see it all the way to the end, and then you make your decision accordingly. When we get together and there isn't affirmative decisions that or opinions that can come out of that in terms of catch, no catch, okay, then maybe we turn to when in doubt, wipe it out. So, questions?
Well, I don't see anything in the chat. If anybody has any, feel free to unmute and come on.
Okay, well, let's transition to sideline communication. If you had a chance to look at the PowerPoint, a lot of the conversation or the concepts that I'd like you to think about are preventative in nature. Building capital, reinforcing, those sorts of words were intentionally chosen because what we're really looking to do is to build confidence and rapport with our sideline, to build up our bank account, because trust me, that capital comes out of that trust and confidence account much quicker than it goes in. Okay, you got to work really, really hard to build a confidence and trust, and it doesn't take much for the account to be closed. So we need to be working on that. Now, there's that fine line, because when we're working the sideline, whether you're a short wing or a deep wing, you saw that comment about trying to keep track of where the head coach is. That's really, really important. And eavesdrop, be diplomatic about it, not doing the Hulk Hogan thing. But try to be aware of what the conversation is and where that person is throughout the game. When it is appropriate, and only when it is appropriate, then approach that individual with information. Coach, if you have just a minute, could you help us with number 66? The umpire tells me that he's talked with him a couple times about action after the whistle. Now, if he blows you off, okay, you just hit the mic, tell the umpire, all right, I told him, you didn't seem too interested. Okay, now we're ready to rumble. Okay. other kinds of things. Like, for instance, we've got a foul and a touchback. All right, so we've got options for the coach. Coach, here are your options, and you roll them out for them. Now, hopefully you're having all of that confirmed with your referee versus 020, so that you're giving him the options exactly the way the referee has stated them to the crew. Now, what typically happens now, some options are fairly obvious, and they'll go, I want the down repeat. Other times it'll be tougher. Do I want 1st and 5 or do I want 2nd and 4? And usually what happens is that coach wants to talk to the respective coordinator in the booth. So we're going to be reasonably patient to give the coach the opportunity to think it through and give us a decision. But we can't wait forever. We have the game to manage. We have spectators, we have players, we have coaches, et cetera, et cetera. So the coach needs to, on a timely basis, give us that choice. Now, initially, if the coach says that he wants choice A, particularly if we haven't already enforced the foul, and all of a sudden he goes, no, repeat the down. Okay. Now, we don't want to look like Cheech and Chong out there going back and forth with, we marked off the foul, we set the ball down. First of all, after you've given the ready for play, we're done. We're not going back. Once that ready for play has sounded, we're locked. All right. But I would hope that we would, if he's going to change his mind, he would do so before we put the ball on ground. But if the coach says, can I have repeat the down? Okay, you hit the mic, you say, Chuck or Nat or Gary, he really wants the down replayed, 1st and 10. Then all the referee does is hit the announcing mic and simply says, correction, the foul has been accepted or the foul has been declined, what have you, it will be 1st and 10. Again, you don't belabor the point. You don't say he changed his mind. You don't say we were wrong. None of that sort of thing. It's correction. The enforcement will either be this or we decline the foul, 3rd down, put the ball back into play. Now, on the other sideline, the coach may be saying, well, how many choices does he get to make? Coach, we'd do the same thing for you, but there clearly was time for us to be able to implement really what he wanted to do, and we would extend to you the same courtesy. And again, don't belabor the point, and if the ball is ready for play, I guarantee you that other coach will get busy coaching his team. The other thing that comes to mind is oftentimes we're our own worst enemies. Number one, we speak when we don't need to. Think of this in terms of the game show Jeopardy. When an answer is given, it has to be in the form of a question. And that's really what we're looking for it's kind of in reverse of Jeopardy. But we want to make sure that the coach is asking a question. Why wasn't that an illegal shift? Why was that ineligible downfield? Okay, that's a specific question that we should answer. Stay away from trying to respond to every time somebody squeaks over there, even if they're squeaking it with a high-pitched voice. Doesn't necessarily mean that we need to respond. In fact, oftentimes we're a whole lot better if we stay out of that mess. Okay. Now, if he comes up to you and says, I don't understand. All right, now it's not really a question. But what I would say to him is, all right, what part don't you understand? How can I help you? And if he asks you a question that you're not prepared to answer, we're probably already past the situation at hand. Then very simply what you can say is, well, the next time we have a change of possession or end of a quarter or a timeout, I'll have Chuck or Nat or Gary come over and we'll try to get it straightened out for you. Usually by the time that we get to that point, they're done. They've moved on. They have it pretty well figured out that either they're wrong or it's too late for anything to be done about it, but they just needed to vent at the time. Now, when we need to pay attention is when the statement comes out with "you are." There aren't very many things that can follow "you are" that we're going to be able to ignore or get beyond. You are a really good official. You are a really good crew. Thanks, coach. Yeah, we're probably not going to get that a lot, at least not until the end of the game. But when they get personal, when they get inappropriate in terms of understanding the fact that this is interscholastic athletics, that's when we get involved. Those other times, we just kind of roll with the punches. I've told some of you or given you this analogy. Years and years ago, in one of my school districts as superintendent, I had a principal, a very good principal, but one of the shortcomings that this person had was when someone would get in their shorts, so to speak, and really challenge their authority or their judgment, it became problematic for this person. And if it was a staff member, he wanted to write him up. It was a parent, he wanted them banned from the building. You get the idea. And my comment back to him was always, well, did you change your mind? No. Are you still the building principal? Yeah. Okay. What's our problem here? We are in control and until we choose to give up control. So when you're on the sideline, we need to stay calm. We have to be the adult in the room. We always have to be professional. And if things get really, really bad, you saw some suggestions that I made in the PowerPoint. Sometimes you need to walk away. Now, just like in baseball, once the umpire turns and walks away, he's essentially saying, I'm done. We've covered everything that we can in this situation. And if the manager or the player, whatever, continue to follow, an ejection usually results. Okay. So if the coach is carrying on in that way, you have to apply your judgment to that given situation. But sometimes you don't have any choice because they put you in that position. Before we get to that position, I would hope that you would try to go, coach, please stop. Coach, you're getting personal. You're crossing the line, the stop sign. And if they continue to plow on, make sure your flag gets out into the field, okay? Because you're probably going to lose the flag if it lands in the bench. How do I know that? Yeah, happened to me. Fortunately, I had a second flag in my pocket. And I got a new one at halftime, so I had a backup flag. But get your flag out onto the field. But use that as your last result rather than your first choice. Be kind. Bill Carollo talks about kill them with kindness, and I know that's hard. Oh man, I've had coaches in every sport get under my skin, and I got better at the end of my career by trying not to reveal the fact that they had gotten my goat. That's hard, and particularly when you're young and you're earning your stripes, so to speak. You haven't had a lot of experience with being confronted by people that always before that you respected as your coaches. It's a little hard to do. And again, like we talked about earlier, some of this is just getting the reps in and getting the experience. But kill them with kindness, walk away, make sure that if they act in a way that I, as a superintendent or as a principal, or potentially a Board of Education member, would be embarrassed by our employees' behavior, then discipline is in order. Other than that, move on. The other advice that I would give in terms of sideline communication, sometimes you'll get an assistant coach that will see their role as being sort of the Pat Sajak of the game, where they're just going to have a lot of back and forth with you. And that can, okay, we had a question coming up. We can't have a running dialogue with anyone over there because that's going to affect our concentration. But let me tell you something, regardless of the sport, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, tiddlywinks, whatever it is, if you're giving assistant coaches a lot of rope and a lot of time, you're making a mistake. You're making a mistake. And all you simply do is to say, hey, coach, I appreciate your concern, but we're getting way too many questions here. And it's affecting my concentration. So you need to run those questions through the head coach. And then if he deems them appropriate to ask, he'll let us know. Well, that'll be the end of that. That'll end really quickly. All right, what was the question in the chat?
Yeah, Rich, Mike asked, how do you address a coach that wants a holding called on every play?
Well, a couple of things come to mind. Well, first of all, I just demonstrated a very important concept. Think before you speak. That was in the PowerPoint. Don't wait for that coach to stop talking and then immediately jump into it, okay? Take a pause, make sure you have your wits about you and you know what you're going to say. All right, now the coach that wants holding on every play, a very simple response would be, coach, I suppose there could be holding on every play on both teams, and you know that would spoil the game. So what we're looking for are fouls, all non-safety fouls that have a direct bearing on the play and put an opponent at a disadvantage. And what you're talking about does not qualify. So let's move on from that, because we're just not going to throw those kinds of fouls. Now, if it persists, then I think you can go to the point where you can say, hey, look, coach, we've talked about this a couple of times. This has got to stop. This just is not good for you. It can't speak to whether this is a distraction for you, but it clearly is a distraction for us. So we need to have you stop. And if it still continues, I'd bring the referee over and say, well, yeah, get this guy to get off of whatever the topic happens to be. And after you've gone through those steps, after you've had the referee go over and say, let it go. All right, now if he continues on, get your flag out onto the field and let's move on. Because it seems pretty obvious to me that the person wants one. Because when you've gone through all the stages of warnings and you're still unable or unwilling to move forward, then you want something beyond that. Is that helpful?
Yep, it is. Thanks, Rich.
You're very welcome, Mike. Good to have you on the call. Okay, other questions? All right, let's look at some specific situations from a couple of years ago. This first clip, now it doesn't turn out to be anything, but keep in mind the concept that we want the white clear. The white is our area to officiate. We need to have confidence that the white area is going to remain clear, because there are going to be times when we're not going to be able to see because we're looking back at the play. So we need to make sure with our get back coaches, our warnings, what have you, that area is clear so that we can officiate the football game. Now, this coach is going to come on a dead sprint from a fair distance away. Now, not sure what's on his mind, whether he thinks that's going to be a forward pass or whether he thinks that potentially this is a foul out here around the numbers. Doesn't matter. He came out of the box. So by definition, when he came out of the coach's box, he's subject to foul. Now, we don't know what he was saying. So he runs clear down to looks like the 20-yard line. He's out of his box and he ain't coming down there to tell us how good our shoes are shining. So I would say here he's subject to foul. At the very least, you need to go to this guy and go, no, we ain't having that. No. You need to stay within your box. You need to make sure you stay out of the way. And then you've got your warnings and you've got your for sideline warning and you've got sideline interference. What we want to do with sideline interference, though, is we want to make sure that either we have to run around someone or if we have contact with them. If we have contact with them, it's automatic. You're running into someone when you're in the white on that sideline, other than non-game personnel. Like if you run into a chain crew person, there ain't anything we can do about that. But if you run into game personnel in the white, that should be an automatic foul. That's a safety situation for both of the people involved, especially us. So here, I don't know whether we addressed this or not. Hard to tell. He, I think, came to a conclusion fairly quickly that he was out of his box and retreated. But even if he was coaching, that's at least got to be a warning. Now, in this particular case, the block in question, there may have been a break in contact between this blocker and the kicking team player. And if that is the case, then potentially, yeah, it looks like he loses contact. So a block in the back that doesn't result in a tackle like here could be a foul, should be a foul. All right. Now, in this particular case, whether we got lucky or we were good, we got the play right. The runner was down. We didn't call a foul. But this sideline has to be cleared up. That's just totally unacceptable. Went to about the 18. All right, next clip. All right, we're going to get this at the end of a game. This is clip 155. Now, it isn't the last play of the game, but in effect, it ends the game. Okay. Now, you've got this sideline that pretty much erupts. Now, the easiest thing in the world here is to flag this for sideline interference, sideline warning. If you're going to flag it, I would say make it a warning. Don't flag them for interference. They're excited. They just won a state championship or secured, maybe that's a better word, a state championship, because probably one kneel down and this game is over. All right, we need to use some judgment. All right. Now, hopefully we get the aid of the coaches to get people back where they belong. If we get people beyond the numbers, it becomes problematic. I see one guy that got maybe two, a third one that came out there that got outside or inside the numbers. I'd support a foul here or a flag for a sideline warning. We just need to understand the magnitude of the situation and the time of the game. All right. Next clip. All right, this happened in a state semifinal game, and it just so happened that I was an on-site observer. If you run that back to the beginning of the clip, please, Gregor. It jumps in for some reason really early. All right, so the play happens. You can see the coach is now at about the numbers, and the referee is talking with the umpire. We're getting things confirmed. You can see the head coach is now almost to the hash mark. Now, a couple of things. First of all, short wing, deep wing. Why are these people out that far onto the field? No, No, you move everybody back, particularly your coaching staff, while we're getting things resolved. Now, the other thing that I would say here is this conference occurs essentially at the hash mark. If we're going to talk with a coach, whether it's the sideline people, the referee, whomever is involved, that conversation occurs in the white. This is not the kind of view or kind of visionary position that we want to give our work. The coach does not belong that far out on the field. He's not out there for an injury. He's not out there for any legitimate reason. So, first of all, I would hope that our sideline people would be working to get people back, and the dialogue would be, Coach, if you have a question after this gets taken care of by the referee, he'll come over and talk with you. Walk him back to the sideline. Now, but that's what you say also, is that when he comes over, we're going to need to have this conversation in the white. So please come back with me. Now, if he does not do that, okay, now he's suspect of foul. But number two, when you get the attention of the referee's going to walk right past that coach and say, Coach, this conversation is going to occur right over here. If he doesn't follow you, you got an automatic. Okay. He's out on the field. He doesn't belong there, and he's not cooperating to get back where he belongs. Now, in this particular case, the ruling was absolutely correct. Frankly, I don't remember what it was, right? But the crew did a good job breaking this play down, getting it right, moving forward. Coach didn't like it, didn't understand it. Okay, fair enough. We can explain that, but the conversation does not happen at the hash mark. All right, next clip.
Hey, Rich, we got a quick question about that
Yes,
Chelsea
sir.
play. Edgar wants to know, what do you do if they already had a sideline warning earlier in the game? So if you're throwing your flag on Chelsea here and they already had one earlier in the game, they're going to get penalized yardage?
Rich, you need help with that one?
Well, I know what the rule says.
Okay.
I struggle just a bit philosophically. And what I would be trying to do as sideline officials would be to rein in my group. But when they get outside the numbers, it becomes really, really hard to support not doing something. And we do get some people out there. So you can only have one sideline warning, and then you go to interference. Is that correct?
Yeah, after the first sideline is a warning, the second is 5 yards, the third is a 15-yard on sportsmanlike on the coach. Yeah.
Well, and frankly, they don't give two hoots about a 5-yard foul at this point, because that means we're moving the ball back to the 50-yard line. They're going to take a knee anyway. So, yeah, if you're not getting the kind of help and or support to clean this up pretty quickly, then yeah, put one down just from the standpoint of appearance. We just need to understand they're out there because they're just flat out excited. How many teams have a chance to win a state championship? Is that helpful? Do your best to keep them back, but if there's just too much traffic over there, go ahead, throw it, get your flag out onto the field, enforce it, mark it ready for play. All righty. This should be number 142. All right, a couple of things. This was a playoff game from a couple of years ago. Now, there's supposed to be media passes or sideline passes for people that are authorized to be down this close to the field. I'm thinking that probably that lady over there to the far right, not to pick on the lady, but just to illustrate with the poofy hat on, I'm thinking that she probably doesn't have a sideline pass. So this is where we need to work with game management. Of course, that starts during the week when we're communicating with our administrators, when we're asking questions about, who's involved with game management. Will there be police on the field? Will sideline passes be assigned to people that are authorized to be out there? But this problem did not happen just out of the blue. I'm suspecting that as the game wore on, we got more and more people out of the stands down on the field. That's where we've got to be aware of our surroundings. And as we're seeing people out there and we're not seeing credentials, we should be saying, I'm sorry, you need to be at least beyond the limit line. And if we're not getting the support and cooperation, which we get nothing here, no one, some people might move. We got a couple moving back 2 steps. The guy in the white pants moved back, so he's not in the white anymore. That's still way too close. Before we resume the game, and that's real simple. Hey, folks, we just took a official's timeout, and we're not going to resume play until we get everybody back behind the limit line. Of course, you're going to get worry about what's going on in the field. Ignore that. We don't give a rat's fanny about those kinds of comments. Insist on it. And then you should be expecting that you would, and that's good time for referee to come on the mic and say, referee's timeout. Game management is requested on the western sideline. I'll tell you what, people they'll start moving because they know that's them and they're not looking to be embarrassed. But we can't have this kind of traffic out there. It's not healthy for anybody. All right, next one. Same game, other end of the field. Now, we've got some people that are associated with the chain crew, but we got a lot of people, and I see some white things that probably look like they're photographers. Okay, but they've got to be behind the limit line. They're up almost to the 6-foot barrier, up to the white. We want them out of there. You need them out of there. The other thing that I would add is if you're getting feedback from people, and of course you're not going to get, you guys are doing a great job. You're going to get, that was a horrible call. As soon as you start hearing that, it's time to go to the whip and get people out of there. That's not going to improve either. Okay. Now that may take a play or two, but you need to start moving people out of there that don't belong. All right, next clip, Gregor, might be the last one. All right, this is a very common situation, punt that goes to the sideline at the bottom of the screen. Now, when we see the end zone view, we're going to see that we get players coming onto the field before we have completed our duties. I wouldn't worry about that too much unless you've got a whole lot of people and they run into you. Go to the end zone view, Gregor. I would talk with the get back coach. I would talk with the head coach about, hey, let us finish the play. Let us get the spot. See that run around. One player that was coming on, the guy that participated in the play, obviously there are times when we have to do that. But that's part of our conversation during the pregame with the get back coach is let us finish plays. Now, again, within reason, continue to work with them. This is still fairly early in the game. If we can get this corrected without a formal warning or something like that, all the better, but I wouldn't put up with it throughout the game either. All right, those are some clips to illustrate this whole concept. Just to kind of sum it up, less is more. If I could put it into just a few words, the less you say over there, probably the better off you're going to be. Not only in terms of the number of times you speak, but the number of words that you use. Try to be really, really concise. One of the things that came up in my superintendent training was to think in terms of sound bites, because when you've got a reporter with a microphone in front of your face, I guarantee you, if you have to and you go on and on and on to explain something, that's maybe something you really think is important for them to know. It's not going to make the news. If you got to figure out what is essential in terms of what you want to communicate, what is your message in about 15, maybe 20 words, because a soundbite is going to be about 20 seconds most at max. Okay. So we need to train ourselves to think in terms of sound bites rather than just thinking on our feet or, just talking and talking until we think that we finally arrive at what it is we want to say. That's not going to go well. All right. Always be the adult. Always know that ultimately you have the authority until you voluntarily give it up. And as soon as you drop yourself down to the level of that coach, you have lost control. Nat, being a law enforcement person for many, many years, knows that in terms of working with the public. As long as you remain professional, as long as you maintain the dignity of your uniform, then you got a shot. But as soon as you go in the gutter, you got no shot. It's going to be over. It's not going to end well. So those are some thoughts about sideline communication. It's like anything else. It's an art. You not only need to think about situations that have come up over the years in terms of questions that you got from coaches. Sometimes you answered well, other times you go, probably wasn't a very good answer. So you need to think through those kinds of things. But that eye contact is really, really important. Respectful eye contact, as opposed to, body language is huge. Just don't let him get it personal or disrespectful. That's when the stop sign comes out and we start talking him down. Whoa, coach, I was good until you got to that point. You just got personal. And usually that causes them to back up a little bit. And if they don't, okay, now they're putting themselves into jeopardy. So,
hey, Rich, we got a question in there.
Yep.
How do you address a coach that is complaining about another official's call?
Like that was a terrible DPI call?
Yeah, so if you're the headlinesman and your coach is complaining about something your line judge called or the deep wing down there, how do you address that?
Okay, well, first of all, that's a terrible DPI call. Is different than that guy is horrible. See the difference between the two? The DPI is subject to interpretation because it's judgment. But when somebody says that guy is horrible, all right, now we can bring that to a close, because it's like, whoa, coach, stop, please stop right there. You just got personal and we can't go there. Now, if he continues on again, after you put the stop sign up, after you've given them the warning, okay, now they're subject to foul. I should have covered this earlier. I'm glad you asked this question. In the event that you need to ring somebody up, a write-up is going to be really, really important because there may or may not be follow-up. School administrators, the coach may call the coordinator, what have you, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to be proactive in terms of our reporting to put our bosses into the best position possible to be able to respond if and when they get a phone call. Like, for instance, if, let's say in that situation that we just talked about, where that guy is terrible and you give him the stop sign, try to talk him down, try to get him to back off a little bit, and he continues to say, no, I'm telling you, that guy is BS, or, you know, whatever the case may be. Okay, get your flag out on the field. That's an automatic. So in your foul report, you're going to say something to the effect of UNS head coach, inappropriate language about a game official. But in the game report, that's where we're going to get specific. See, the foul report often gets shared with the teams. We have to think of it in those terms. What isn't shared with the teams normally is the report from the referee to the coordinator. That's where we're going to get into the details, and that's where we talk about the fact that the coach emotionally charged towards the field judge about a judgment call and got personal by saying that guy is horrible. I tried to talk him down, tried to make him aware that he just got personal. And then his next comment was, that guy is BS. Okay, that's kind of information that you got to empower the coordinators with, so that if the AD calls, the principal calls, you can say, okay, here's what took place on the sideline. Don't know what you heard, but this is what occurred. And, you know, sometimes there's, well, first of all, if the person calling, well, that involves a coordinator, so never mind about that. I doubt that game officials are going to get a phone call in that situation. In fact, you should refer that on up the ladder, up the chain, if you would get one. So is that helpful? Stop sign, give them a shot. But if there's no response, you know, if you don't get the affirmative response, you got to go to the next level, because now we're way out of bounds. You know, now we're in a position where it becomes difficult for the coordinators to support us the other way. Well, why did you let Coach A behave in that in that sort of way? See the difference? Hope you see that. We need to demonstrate the fact that we were responsible. We attempted to work with our sideline or the respective coach, but that person did not cooperate. Other questions? Well, we've gone an hour. I didn't expect we'd go an hour tonight. Maybe I was a little too long with the tongue tonight, but we're about to impart on a new season, and it's a great time of year. It's what we look forward to. You've worked really hard during the off season. The fact that you've been involved in these calls and done other things individually and as a crew is a reflection of how you feel about the game. So from that standpoint, as also a consumer, a grandparent, let me thank you for that. This is supposed to be fun. And sometimes it's not fun. So we need to provide the support and the balance on a crew. If somebody has a tough game, they have a tough interaction with a coach or whatever it happens to be, we need to make sure we come to their aid and their support so that this properly gets balanced out, so it doesn't go kaflooey on us. But there will be times where things will be uncomfortable. in my career over 50 years or more of high school or college, I would say easily 98% of my experiences, regardless of the sport, were positive. Every now and then you'd run into a stinker and it wasn't a lot of fun. Sometimes I contributed to my own demise. Other times I didn't, but I learned from them. But I never lost sight of the fact that I was committed to what it was I was doing. Part of that was the support that I got from other people. The other thing that comes to mind is that the harder we work, the more reward we find. Now, it isn't always immediate. We're looking for immediate gratification in our society. Microwave. I want it done in 30 seconds. I want my popcorn in 2 minutes. Well, that's just not how this thing works. Our rewards often are way up the road or up the road a piece. What comes to mind, in addition to working hard, is what I found was the better that I got at things, the more fun I was having by doing it. And you can think of whether it's bowling, golf, cards, playing the piano, an instrument, whatever you want to think of. Isn't it more fun to really, really do it well and find yourself improving? That's really what this is all about, individually and as a crew, is to find the joy and to understand that a big part of the joy is the process of getting to that particular point. The games are the payoff, but you got to have fun getting to that particular point. So stay healthy. Everyone should have my email address, my cell phone number. If something comes up that you want to talk about individually, you know how to get hold of me. We are going to use Tuesday night, so a week from tonight, will be our first weekly session. And what we're looking to have happen here is that when you work games and you see things, or you're watching other games and you have questions about it, send me the game, the people of the assigning group, schools involved, clip number, and what you're interested in, and we'll develop a playlist to talk through. I will also do the same thing from games across the state. I'm once again going to be working for the West Michigan group, in addition to SEMSO and Referee U and some other groups. So I look at quite a few games and select clips, and we'll be doing some of that. But the more you can contribute to this, the better off and the more fun it's going to be. And as we talk about every year, this has to be a safe place. What isn't acceptable would be if someone submits a clip where maybe they didn't handle a play particularly well mechanically. The thing that cannot happen is for someone or a group of individuals to say, did you see old Joe on that game at Bush Creek? Boy, didn't he screw that up. Hey, this game will humble you. This game will humble you. So when you're kind of ha about somebody that messed it up, you might be next. So we're going to stay off of that. We're going to respect each other, and we're going to learn from each other's successes and failures.